Welcome. For the next 10 minutes or so, we'd like to invite you to just relax, close your eyes, open and rest in the presence, and just hold space. Namaste.
Welcome.
Welcome to our weekly online satsang. Satsang is simply a Sanskrit word that literally means community of truth. Which sounds kind of high and lofty. What it refers to is a gathering of two or more people who are on the spiritual path of awakening, who come together to share their journeys, to share their insights, to share their consciousness and energies with one another. It's an essential part of the spiritual journey. Sooner or later, we need to connect with others who are also awakening, whose hearts are flowering and transforming. In this case, our community is informal in the sense that there's no membership per se. We come from different teachings, different teachers, different spiritual traditions and religious backgrounds or no religious background. We come from all over the world. We're here in Clearwater, Florida in the United States. More out there is in Colombia. We have people who join us from literally all over the world, from many different time zones. So we're not always here at the same time on Monday night Eastern Time US, especially people that are joining us in Europe and have other schedules. So some of us are here live. The recording stays up forever. And during the week between one Monday to the next, many times more people actually tune in and experience the satsang. And that's one of the beautiful things about spirit. There is no separation or distance in spirit. Everything is here. Spirit is everywhere present equally. So wherever you are, the unction, the presence that we're just soaking in here is right there with you. And there is no time in spirit. So if someone watches one of these video recordings a year from now or 10 years from now, they would experience the presence in exactly the same way as if they were here live. So we hold everyone that is here tonight, that will be looking at this in the future. We're holding all of you in conscious intention as we flow out to everyone what we call the flowering heart blessing. It's got a fancy Sanskrit name too, but it doesn't really matter because all that means is flowering heart blessing. It is a manifestation or a transmission, actually, of divine grace, awakened consciousness, and light and unconditional love from the divine source. When the divine shared this with me and Suzanne over 7 years ago, we've been doing many kinds of blessing for decades. I've been involved in energy transmission for over 50 years. Suzanne was knee-high to a grasshopper then, but she's been at it ever since. And there's so many beautiful forms of spiritual blessing available today that catalyze and accelerate the spiritual journey of the flowering of the heart and awakening into higher states. But this one, the divine told us to begin sharing a little over 7 years ago, and said this one's different in this sense. This one does not flow through any particular master or enlightened teacher or avatar or spiritual hierarchy or spiritual tradition. The divine said it comes directly from me to whomever I choose to give it to, which is anyone who wants it, absolutely freely. The divine said this blessing, which catalyzes awakening and awakening to our essential oneness with the divine within and causes that to begin to flower from within us. This particular blessing, the divine said, is free. It's a gift of grace. Grace is a gift given through unconditional love without any conditions attached and without any price tag. So the divine said, don't charge people for this. Give it to them freely. And if they're interested in being initiated to share the flowering heart blessing, if they feel it, like it, connect with it, want to share it themselves, let them know that the instant they received the flowering heart blessing, they were initiated and activated to be able to pass it on. So since you're soaking in it right now, whether you've been giving it up to this moment, you're definitely soaking in an incredible blessing now that will catalyze and accelerate awakening. But you can join us tonight, invite the divine to flow through you and to share this blessing with all the participants here tonight and those that will be watching this video in the future. You can share the flowering heart blessing through light touch on the top of the head. Just invite the divine to pour it through you, and then just get out of the way and don't do anything. Yeah. Any thought you add, any visualization, any breath work, anything you try to put into it just gets in the way. The divine knows exactly what it's doing, and we're just instruments. So you can do it in a person's physical presence with their informed consent. You don't want to share a blessing like this without people understanding this is going to do something and it's going to have a profound effect. And then if they consent to that, oof, the journey's on. At a distance, you can share this blessing without direct consent. It's just like praying for someone at a distance, but it's very powerful. So in prayer or in meditation, you can hold a person or a group of people in your heart with compassion. And if you can do that, then just invite the divine to pour the flowering heart blessing through you to that person or group of people, and feel what happens. It just flows. And it's got nothing to do with you or me, our spiritual development, how much Kundalini energy we have, or internal alchemy, any of those things. So if you want to know more about it, go to our website, floweringheart.org. And in many places, especially on the homepage, there's a link to a 36-minute initiation video where we explain what I've just been talking about in a little bit more depth. And we guide people in a brief initiation meditation that, as it turned out, was very powerful. And because there's no time and spirit, it still is. Every once in a while, Suzanne and I'll hit the play button on that and go, whoa, that's nice. So you feel free to use that. If you don't have a blessing group in your own community, blessing is special. When you lay hands on another person and just get out of the way and invite the divine presence to pour through you into them, to give them whatever they need to be awakened and transformed, that's an amazing thing. When a group of people meet regularly sharing spiritual blessing, whether it's the flowering heart blessing or one of the other beautiful forms of blessing, you will see over a period of time quantum growth in the participants, really. So if you don't have one you resonate with in your own local community, then start one. All you need is one other person and a laptop or a desktop, and just go to our website and hit play on that video. In 36 minutes, everyone who watches will be ready to share the blessing with each other, and you've got a group happening. So we encourage it, and feel free to take that video and use it any way that it's helpful for you. And join us throughout this webcast. Also, before I forget, please give us, if you're on Facebook Live, a like or a love, thumbs up or a heart, because we can come in later and we can see the people that dropped in and blessed us, and we give you a special blessing and a little extra love at the end when we see your name. If you're at Vimeo, you can enter a comment. Some people say, I don't know how to do it. It's way down on the right. There's a little chat box where you can type if you're on Vimeo. But that's the only way we'll know you're there on Vimeo, is if you enter a hi with your name or something in the chat. And we just love that, so please do. I don't think we have any particular announcements. Mm-hmm. Yay. Isn't that nice? So what we do here, other than just hang out and soak in the collective presence that is generated by our collective being. I put it that way because awakening is, I think at the core of awakening is to find all kinds of ways, is awakening from a dream, which is delusional. It's actually a bad dream. That we exist as separate individuals, just a mind and a body that is separate from everyone else. And because we feel separate and we feel distance between ourselves, there's a certain apprehension. Are you going to try to hurt me? Are you going to try to take advantage of me? So there's fear. Fear means we are self-protective. Ego comes in immediately. And so as a result of that, we have this global insanity, a civilization rooted in competition, conflict, and violence. And what needs to happen is a whole new global civilization needs to emerge that's rooted in cooperation instead of competition, harmony instead of conflict, peace instead of violence. This happens as the human heart is awakened and begins to flower in oneness with the divine and with all that is and with one another. So awakening is awakening from this dream that I exist as a separate ego entity to the reality that we are one being. The universe is a manifestation of one being, one universal being. I mean, call it the Tao, call it God, call it the void, call it whatever you like to call it, whatever name you give it, absolutely completely falls short and sort of leads to a concept when the universal consciousness and being is beyond all definition, conceptualization, any name we could give it. But that's what we are. We are 8 billion. I just saw a picture today of the 8 billionth human that was born. I don't know how they figured that out. I don't even trust it. But we're about 8 billion on this planet. 8 billion quirky manifestations of one consciousness, of one being. In India, it might be called Brahma, and its qualities defined as Sat, Chit, Ananda in Sanskrit. Sat means truth or existence or being. And Chit or Chitta is supreme awareness, and Ananda is bliss or unconditional love. So the universal being has these qualities of pure being, pure awareness, and pure bliss or pure love. And we are all manifestations of that. But in this manifestation of universal consciousness, of one love, of one light, one being in 8 billion quirky forms, this phenomenon occurred where these individual manifestations got the idea, I exist. I'm something special. I'm different than you. And we are different. I mean, all 8 billion of us are amazingly unique and amazingly the same. So when we awaken and the scales fall from our eyes, you look into my eyes and you see yourself looking back at you. I look into your eyes and I see myself looking back at me, and suddenly I realize I don't need to fear you because you're me. I don't need to, why would I compete with you? I mean, who's winning? And why would we be in conflict? We can just roll in harmony and peace when we're awakened. And then there's peace in the world instead of war. So the solution to what's going on Earth is the collective awakening of humanity. And we'll cease destroying the planet because we'll experience oneness with the planet. We wouldn't want to hurt ourselves. We wouldn't want to burn one of our hands off. Ouch, that hurts. Well, why don't we feel that when we hurt the earth? Because people are living in a state of consciousness where they don't feel oneness with the earth. They don't feel that the universe is our physical body, not just this one human body. So I think you're beginning to get it. Most of you already had it. And this needs to be a collective awakening. It's not enough for me to be awake or Suzanne to be awake or you to be awakened. We need the entire collective consciousness of humanity, which is a thing, to collectively shift. There's a story we used to use years ago. I did actually some research, and there does appear to be some scientific basis to the 100th monkey. I mean, you may have heard about the 100th monkey. Scientists were studying the snow monkey that lives in various places all over the world, but there are populations of the snow monkey that live on islands off the coast of Japan. And this was a perfect place to study them. And And this has been going on for some time, the interest in and studying of the snow monkey. But a number of years ago, a young snow monkey experimented with a new behavior that snow monkeys don't do, and that is wash their food before they eat it. Now, that's obvious to us. Even a raccoon, I think, will wash its food. But the snow monkey didn't do that. And this is a very positive behavior for so many health reasons. And so this little monkey, the only snow monkey on Earth at this time, began to wash its food. Wow. Well, its mother saw that. And so the mother began to imitate this new behavior. And you've heard monkey see, monkey do. It began to spread. Now, this is a small group of snow monkeys on an isolated island with no telephone lines or internet to connect it with the other populations of snow monkey throughout the world. But suddenly, a phenomenon happened. It was beginning to infect the collective consciousness of that little island, and overnight, all the snow monkeys in the world began to wash their food. There was something connecting them on this very subtle level beyond the physical plane. The 100th monkey is that critical number that's required to trigger a collective awakening in the collective consciousness. Humanity is a little like that. Who knows the exact number? I've heard some great spiritual teachers say it's 0.001%. That when 0.001% of humanity becomes awakened or enlightened, that it'll trigger that awakening in the collective consciousness. Well, there are far more than 80,000 awakening people on Earth right now. But we're talking about around 80,000 people reaching a very high state of consciousness, and it being so much more contagious than unenlightened, negative, dense consciousness that it just begins to ripple through the collective, just like the 100th monkey. And one day, everyone wakes up, and they wake up.
That's funny. I was listening to a program about solar energy and solar panels, and they said that these studies have been done that if you introduce something new, when it reaches 15% of the population, then it opens up, just like you were talking about, that enough people start getting solar panels on their house, then it becomes more common and more acceptable in our weird, bizarre human minds.
It's the new norm.
And oh, well, everybody's going solar, so I'm going to go solar. But they said it was about 15%. For introducing new ideas into things when it picks up that kind of pace that spreads.
That seems more realistic than 0.001%. Right. Because that would be 80,000. And I think there are well over 80,000 awakened people on Earth right now.
Yeah.
But point being that with every person that begins to awaken, that divine consciousness, which is infinite at the center of their heart, begins to flower, blossom, unfold, and the light of awakened consciousness begins to radiate through that person out into the world. And it's so contagious. It's just, it ripples out through the collective. So with each one of us that awakens, and with each one of us that deepens our awakening, that's all being experienced on some level by the collective. And sooner or later, because the number of awakened people is growing, and the number of unawakened delusional people, no matter what the world looks like, is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller day by day. There are an awful lot of asleep people. So this is a huge conversion process, but it's underway and it can't be stopped. That's the thing. That's why in ages past, when you had one person come on the scene, like Buddha, that was dangerous. And it changed not just India, but the whole world was changed through the consciousness, the presence, and the teaching of the Buddha. And what is not widely known is he died of poisoning. And it's, people can debate on how he was poisoned, but he was poisoned. And Jesus Christ, we know what happened to him. We know what happened to Mahatma Gandhi and other light givers. So in times past, the solution of the collective unconscious, the repressive element, was when there was a light giver that was too bright, they were going to change the world, we would have to ignore them, and if they were so bright we couldn't ignore them, we would remove them. And that happened again and again and again as many of the great light showers were eclipsed from view. Now there are just so many of us. You couldn't do it. And it's spread out of people have been freaked out over pandemics and things like that. This is a pandemic of enlightened consciousness that absolutely cannot be stopped. So welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. Glad we're with you. So we open it to questions and answers.
Looks like we got some.
I think we've got some.
Okay.
For the next while, we'll discuss insights and questions about the spiritual journey. And then we'll come back, and we're sending the Flowering Heart blessing all through this. So if you're here to be replenished and reviled, just keep soaking it in and drinking it up. Join us in sending it, because this is one of those cases where it's even more blessed to give than to receive. This is flowing through you to everyone else. It's really doing something powerful in you. And then at the end, we'll do the open-eyed light meditation. So what do we got? All right, Ekaterina writes, how can we deal with phobias? I have claustrophobia, and with meditation and breathing and Rivotril, I have been able to take a plane. But if you have advice, we'll appreciate it. Well, okay. This is not my field of specialty, but everything kind of is. There's absolutely awakening, and the process of clearing unconscious programming, which is part of awakening, will dissolve phobias and set you free. I mean, phobias are irrational fears of certain things. There's usually a reason that they're there. And they can be cleared. There are skillful energy workers that have modalities that can do that. I mean, I'm going to bring him up just for a minute. Tony Robbins, someone that we've known for a number of years, and actually spent time with in India. And Tony's claim to fame was his use of the modality called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And early on, he claimed that he could cure anybody of any phobia within minutes. And some psychiatrist said, "You're an arrogant little snit," basically, I'm paraphrasing, and challenged him to sort of a duel of effectiveness of their methods. Well, so there's this woman who had a phobia of snakes, which a lot of us could understand that, right? I'm not afraid of snakes, but they're kind of primal. They're wired into our consciousness in a really interesting way. And the psychiatry couldn't help her. The psychotherapy couldn't help her. Tony Robbins said, basically, I got this. And he brought her on stage publicly, and he worked with her because he understood how to diffuse physiological triggers in psychology and in the body. And then after a few minutes of working with this lady with cameras rolling and everything, he comes and he hands her a bag and says, reach in here and pull out what's there. And there's a snake in there. And she absolutely had no more fear. And all this was filmed. And so that was the beginning, I think, of his real rise to fame as someone that could help other people. Well, fast forward, his wife, Sage, had this
Motion sickness.
Motion sickness. Yes, I was going to get that. And Tony's NLP didn't help her. Worked with the snake lady, but not with his own wife. And I mean, she had such violent motion sickness that she couldn't drive to the grocery store, be driven to the store without without throwing up. She became nauseous completely. And Tony tried everything. He even, because of his connections, he was able to introduce her to doctors that work with NASA with astronauts, because being weightless in space can cause some, fluttery feelings inside, I guess, to say the least. And they were expert at helping people deal with weightlessness, dizziness, fear of heights, and all of that. They couldn't help her. So they ended up going to a process in India, which is no longer available, that particular process. This was more than 15 years ago. And she went through this process in an ashram community that Tony he was very resistant, but anyway, he let her do it. And after 21 days of going through these deep meditations and clearing and working on internal charges are suppressed emotional patterns of energy that get triggered throughout our life. And this particular process was really great at releasing those triggers, and through deep meditation, but also energy transmission and guided processes to directly face your fears and just let them dissolve and be free of them. And when it was over, to Tony's amazement, she had no more motion sickness. He brought his helicopter there to India, and is doing these flips in his helicopter with his wife, and Sage was absolutely free. Stuff that would make you and I probably scream. The monk that flew with them threw up, but she was completely cured, and it was through divine energy helping to release emotional charges and program patterns in the subconscious. This is something that happens naturally in meditation and in the process of awakening, as these inner unconscious energies and areas of our awareness are brought into awareness and released. So there's so many ways it can happen.
It also makes me think that fears and phobias are coming from the mind, and they are tied to a charge or a trigger or some past experience that we may not even be conscious of. Mm-hmm. And as we do the inner work, we can become more conscious of that. And a very intimate part of that is to continually return to your heart and deepen your connection with the divine. Because if we're living in faith and trust, there's no need for fears and phobia, because we know that we're going to be covered. And so it's a deeper and deeper process of coming to that peace that passes all understanding.
Indeed. Well said. So, for instance, in the New Testament, John the Beloved disciple, in his first epistle, wrote that perfect love casts out fear, dissolves fear, removes fear. And if you read the whole context, St. John is saying that perfect love is experienced in the presence of the divine. It is the presence of the divine. So the more that we deepen that connection and open to the presence, the more phobias and fears just naturally melt away in total inner peace. Meditation can assist, prayer can assist, the journey itself. So, okay. More writes, I've read that with these energy changes, it is necessary to find new ways of connecting with the divine because the old ones are no longer going to work. Wanted to hear your comments about it. That's certainly an experience that people have along the way. It's very common that a practice that was really bearing fruit, especially when we're talking about connection to the divine, things that worked, maybe there was a special prayer, maybe it was the Hail Mary, or maybe it was reciting a certain Buddhist sutra, or one of the Vedas, or the different traditions have their methods using various things, from breath control to focused meditation. And you may have found great awakening and change, and it just worked as part of your daily life, and then suddenly one day it just dries up and you don't experience that anymore. That, very simply, is often something that the divine is doing to make us go deeper, because we tend to get locked into and attached to certain forms, spiritual forms, practices, movements, breath things, mantras, meditations, prayers, visualizations. And that's not the essence. That's a form that's opening a door to something deeper for us. The divine wants us to go deeper than the form, to experience the true essence. And so we'll oftentimes withdraw grace from that particular practice for us, and it just doesn't work anymore. And we try to find, some people just shop around and go from practice to practice, but what the divine is inviting us to do is turn within and go deeper and deeper and deeper into that heart connection with Source. What I've found, and I've been through tons of that, years of that, decades of that, of practices being really anointed for me, and then not, it's not ringing my bell anymore. Where I am now, because I'm not relying on practices for my state of consciousness. My state of consciousness it's just there. And now when I do those simple beginner's practices that I used to do, they all work. Everything works. And I'm really grateful. But I'll bet if I became like really dependent on one and addicted to it, the divine would slowly just sort of phase off of that to remind me that's not what it's about. It's about our essential connection.
I sometimes wonder about these spiritual teachers that say things like, well, because of the energy changing, we're going to have to change the way we practice. When it's not really about, yes, the energy is constantly changing on the planet, but it's not really about, it's not about the practices that we're doing or the way that we're connecting with the divine so much as how deeply are we growing and how are we becoming more in oneness with everything around us. And if we're thinking about practices and we're thinking, I'm not saying not to do practices because they help us deepen, but if we're focused on specifications of how this energy is working and how it's going to change, and I read a book when I was in my early 30s, and I had 2 small kids and teenagers, and it just freaked me out. They were talking about how there's a new earth being created, and those that are still holding on to the dense earth will remain there as things begin to crumble, and then the higher vibration people will go to this new earth and they won't even know that they've gone. And I completely freaked out. I'm like, well, what if my kids don't go with? And what if I forget this? And I was in a tailspin for about 2 months.
Don't worry, you won't even remember that much.
I know, right? So I was traumatized by this book, and I learned something about that experience. Also, I went to a psychic once, and I asked, where should I move? I was graduating from college, and I was torn between 2 cities that I'd never been to before, and she's like, don't go to this one. You'll have a horrible experience and very bad karma for you there. And I had a great time. I ended up moving there anyway. So I always look within for answers instead of hearing what other people are saying, because I've heard so many spiritual predictions from so many different spiritual teachers that have just simply not come through. But if you put a little element of fear into something, people will pay attention and grab onto it like that's God's truth right there. And that just goes back to, when you go in your heart, does that resonate with you as love? Does that resonate with you as coming from a place of fear or love? It's pretty basic stuff to weigh in on. It just takes us getting out of our mind a little bit. And then we can use real discernment that's coming from the heart and from a a place that's not being regulated by chaos and control and fear of the mind and ego.
So with all these energy changes, is it necessary to find new ways of connecting with the divine? Yes. Do the old ones no longer work? No, they just are childish, and we go deeper. St. Paul said, in the end, only three things remain: faith, hope, and love. Faith is naked trust in the darkness of your connection with Source. Hope is a certainty that there's something good coming. And love, well, love is the actual essence of divine nature and consciousness. And so more and more practices become not the heart of it. It's the actual romance, the direct connection of the heart and oneness with the divine.
I find the more that I'm able to be in the present moment and just be with what is, it's so much more simple than anything that I've experienced before, because it's just being present with what is at hand right here, right now. And when you get caught up in the mind and the ego and all of this conflict and chaos, feel what that feels like and just return to the heart, and then feel what that feels like. And when you keep anchoring back in the heart, when you notice you're getting caught up in fear and the mind and the ego, to just keep returning, and it's like strengthening a spiritual muscle. So that's like the most effective practice that I've ever been. But it takes me being aware of when I'm getting caught up in ego and the mind and fear. Mm-hmm. And if we're starting to feel yucky or out of balance, then we need to recenter.
So Ekaterina writes, I am planning a trip, and a lot of fears and attachments are coming to the surface. Also, attachment to my dog. That is stopping me from paying the plane tickets, for the plane tickets. Well, face your fear. And I mean, I guess fear is running from something. It's avoidance of something you don't want to face, you don't want to experience. And living in fear is not an option. Okay? I mean, it is, but why would you want to do that? So, everything we've just said. You got to face it. Stop running from whatever it is that you're running from. Just turn on the inside and face it. Okay, so what? Embrace it, and you're free. John Lewis writes, Bhagwan said Buddha had a pockmarked face and a mustache.
I don't know.
Great. Who cares? You're right. Yeah, probably. It probably wasn't some beautiful God-like character. Karen Armstrong said Buddha was 80 years old, in the jungle and dying. The monks were all around him, asking him, what are we going to do? He said, you'll be okay. Yeah, okay. But why will they be okay? Why did he say they'll be okay? You'll be okay. Because Buddha never went anywhere. He dropped his body, but his consciousness is omnipresent and eternal. And so, yep, the disciples of Buddha have been fine ever since. Moray writes, I hear that what we accomplished extends to our children. Heard. That what we have accomplished, well, okay, I mean, yes, it does to a certain degree. Everything that we are is an extension of our ancestors' accomplishments. It's like we are a bud on a branch of a tree. Call it the family tree, call it the human tree, and it continues to flower and branch out and bud, and we are the buds on the end of those branches. And the bud could go, I'm the first. I'm unique. I did all this myself. But actually, we learn the importance of reverencing and being grateful for what has been passed to us by the ancestors, by the elders. Something that I think many younger souls today don't get. And they go, oh, you guys, you don't know what's going on. We've got the new wave, the new way. And yeah, I mean, the young people have new insights and fresh energies, but everything they are, everything we are, is a further expression and unfolding of what's been handed down to us. So, that's true of our children as well. They receive some of the sat karma. Sat karma is good karma, light karma. There's bad karma and good karma. People talk about karma as, a scary thing because I've sowed bad seed and I'm going to reap what I sow. Well, that's called douche karma. That's dark karma. But there's sat karma, and that's what we do that's positive and light-giving in this life. That does get passed on to our progeny, our children and our children's children. And both the Hindu tradition and the Hebrew tradition speak of 7 generations. And I think I've always thought that's interesting, that they saw this. It goes on forever, but it is particularly powerful in its effects on 7 generations going forward. Both the damaging things we do, so we want to work on that. And the good that we accomplish and the seeds of light that we sow, that blesses our progeny in a powerful way for 7 generations and ongoing.
It's also important, too, to note that I was just sitting here thinking accomplishment may mean something different to different people, We know some people that are cutthroat real estate developers, and they feel very accomplished, even though they've stepped on a lot of toes and hurt a lot of people to get where they are. And for them, they feel very accomplished. And so we need to be very discerning about what we're finding important in our lives and make a commitment to grow deeper into the areas where we may be being hurtful to the future generations and to our children. Sometimes my kids are like, why should we even recycle? Why should we bother? Nobody else is, and the planet's a mess, so what can we do about it? And I said, well, if everybody has that feeling about it, then nobody would do it. And some doing it is better than none, but it's also about changing your consciousness of what is accomplishment.
John writes, Buddha was telling them not to fear. That's, you'll be okay, don't be afraid. And yeah, absolutely, I wasn't making light of that. And I figured that's what you were saying, because you have a very powerful revelation that there's nothing to fear. But why is there nothing to fear? Because everything's going to be okay. And it is. So they were asking, what are we going to do? What you're going to do is you're going to practice my teachings, not sit around attached to my physical form. And you're going to be okay, and you don't need to be afraid. And I'm sure he was comforting them. And it had to be very upsetting, especially to watch him die of poisoning, at his old age and all of that. But he was fine with it. And it's the same with Ramana Maharshi when he was in transition. His disciples are like, heal yourself, you can do anything. He said, where am I going to go? There's no one to go anywhere here. It's all, so it's true that there's nothing to fear, but getting that isn't an intellectual realization.
Right.
It was for you, John, it was a very, very powerful, transcendental, spiritual awakening. And for others of us, it may be more subtle, but the divine presence melts away fear. And it produces something that in Scripture is called the peace of God that passes all understanding, which means it makes no sense that you are at peace and that you are not afraid, because everything's falling apart and there are all kinds of reasons to be afraid, but somehow you're not. And that no fear is rooted in a deep, deep connection to the presence. So the way to get there is to deepen, I guess your practice, as Buddha would be telling them to go deeper in meditation, deeper into their practice. But we're just saying go deeper into the presence. That's the practice.
Our daughter got in a car accident about just over a year ago, and it really rattled me. My blood pressure went up, and every time I got behind the wheel, I'd start shaking, and if cars were driving aggressively, I was really rattled by it. And it's been over a year, and I had to get on this highway I've been avoiding the other day, and I started to feel that shakiness and rattled again, and I had to consciously realize that I was really stressed out driving on this highway. It's And I had to keep, like Yekaterina said, that you have through meditation and breathing, and I found myself doing that in the car. I had to just breathe and go back into my heart and trust that the divine has me in all ways, always. And yeah, so we're all going to be works in progress, you know. We're going to have stuff that comes up in our lives that throws us for a tailspin maybe, and we have to get recentered and keep recentering and keep recentering until that phobia or that fear gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and we're free.
But you hit on one side, on many points, but that fear is of the mind. Mm-hmm. And so the more that we're actually in our hearts,
right,
there it is.
Yeah.
That's where the peace is found and the freedom from fear. The spiritual journey takes a long time, 12 inches. The dive from the head into the heart. I know there's more to it than that, but that's a lot of it right there.
Our minds are so tricky. They want to just keep us locked up in there.
Okay.
Well,
we're...
Great questions. Thanks, guys.
So go ahead and close your eyes and just open yourself to receive divine blessing for whatever you need. Whatever you've brought with you tonight, you can just give that to the divine now and just consent to whatever the presence wants to give you, wants to do in you, what you need to be done in you tonight. Just receive. There's nothing for you to do. You don't need to ask. The divine knows before you even know. Just open up, drink it in, and receive the blessing of the presence. Suffering and draw you into awakening into oneness. we're going to move right into the light meditation. So we'd like to invite you to open your eyes and to begin to make direct eye contact with Suzanne and or me. Just make sure you are continuing to look directly at least one of our eyes. As we dive into the light meditation, Suzanne and I are flooded with oceans of grace and light and love. And blessing begins to flow through every pore of our being, but especially through our eyes, which have been called the doorways of the soul. As you continue to make direct eye contact, the light, the awakening light and grace from the source flows through our eyes, into your eyes, through your eyes, into your heart, causing flames of divine love and the light of awakening to grow brighter and brighter and brighter. There's nothing to do, just keep looking. meditating as long as it feels nice to you, or lie down nearby in Shavasana. That's a yoga pose, but it means just to lie on your back with your eyes closed and your arms loosely at your sides with your palms open, turned upward. And just lie there and let yourself dissolve in the presence in gratitude. We love you so much.
Much love, light, and blessings.
Until we meet next, know that the divine within us beholds the divine within you, your true self, and we bow to you. Namaste.
Namaste.